Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Elevating the Sparks, where we explore together the world of Hasidic thought. It's great to meet with you again tonight on a Monday night. It's been a few weeks. We're now finished with Tisha B'Av. I hope we can all gather together to have a bit of an ahama, a consolation. And I hope tonight is going to be a really special shiur. So give a bit of background. The last time we had the chance to meet, we discussed the legacy and the life of the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya Rishner Zalman of Liadi, the first Rebbe of Chabad, of the Chassidus known as Chabad. We talked a bit about his life, how he came to Chassidus, how he was a really prodigious scholar, some of the works that he wrote, some of the struggles that he had, the influence he's had. And we learned a bit about Chabad, actually. Remember, the notion of Chachma, Bina, and Da'as. We learned together a piece from the Baal Tanya, and I hope that you found that to be interesting and engaging. Well, the Baal Tanya was the first Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, you could say, or the first Rebbe of Chabad. There have been seven Chabad Rebbes. And Chabad, as I'm sure you all know, is a Chassidus that continues to share its light and influence with the world today. And so I thought, as part of our exploration of the world of Chassidus, it would be nice, it would be enjoyable and enlightening to talk to a real life Lubavitcher Chassid, the real thing. And so, Baruch Hashem, we have the privilege of having Chazzan Chaim Freund in our community, and Chaim lives here with his wife Miriel and their children. And we actually had a nice Suda together a few Friday nights ago. And someone I would call both a colleague and a friend, and he graciously agreed to share some of his experiences with us tonight about what it's like to be a Lubavitcher Chassid. So the format is going to be as follows. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask Chaim. He's going to share his responses with us. And if time permitting, Chaim has told me that we might have some time for questions afterwards. So I will indicate at a certain point toward the end of our lecture tonight, if you have any questions, please send them to me in the chat. That should be something they're able to do. You can just chat me privately, and I'm happy to ask them to Chaim. We'll see what time allows for. So that's the plan. And Chaim, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi Bergman, for the opportunity to join.
So actually, Chaim, I feel like this wasn't the order, but we just finished the 3 weeks, and you're such a talented musician and vocalist. I'm wondering if you could it could be brief. I know you want to do this a bit later, but I'm wondering if you could start with a quick Chabad nigun for us, just to get us in the mood. That possible?
Oh, a quick Chabad nigun.
Whatever you'd like. It doesn't need to be fast paced, but just a little something.
Okay. So I'll sing a Chabad nigun that I've sung in shul a few times on Yom Tov. Maybe it's not so familiar to everyone, so I think that's the point. Maybe to teach something new. So I'll sing it, and you may hear me sing it on one of the future, Yom Tovim. So it goes like this. Ato zichartonu mikol ha'amim, ohavto isanu v'rotziso banu, v'ro'em amitanu, mikol alashoynois v'kidashtanu, v'mitzvoisecho, v'kiveiraftanu, malkeinu lavoidosecho, v'shimcho agadol v'akodosh, oleinu koroso, Atto v'chartonu, atto v'chartonu, mikolo amim, ohavto isonu v'rotziso bonu, ohavto isonu v'rotziso bonu, v'roim amtonu, mikol aleshoynois, v'kidashtonu b'mitzvoisecho, v'roim amtonu, mikol aleshoynois, Shoynois, v'kidashtanu b'mitzvoisecho, v'keravtanu malkeinu lavoidosecho, v'keravtanu malkeinu lavoidosecho, v'shimecha hagodoil v'yakodosh, aleinu aleinu karasa, v'shimcha gadol hagadol v'akadosh, aleinu karasa, nirai ay ay ay, ay nira la da da da, ay 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 nam, ay nira ay ay no. So that's a beautiful Chabad digging to those words.
Beautiful. I just want to clarify the words that Chazzan Freund was singing are words that we recite on all of the prayers, all of the tefillos, Amida for Yom Tov. Ata b'chartanu mikol ha'amin. You chose us from all the nations. You've loved us. Ahavta us, son of Yotzisabana. You desired us. Baromam tanu mikol hashonos. You lifted us up above all the other languages. V'kidashtanu b'mitzvosecha. You sanctified us with your commandment. You could feel the excitement. You could feel the happiness in the niggin. So thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. Thank you. Sky. Okay, so the first thing that I would like for you to share with us is, we've talked a lot about the theory of Chassidus and different ideas and things that they emphasize, but maybe if you could share with us on a very practical way, how does being a Chabad Chassid or Chabad Chassidus, how does it affect your daily routine, your daily life?
Okay, sure. So if I want to be true to my Chabad identity, we started off with a very lively niggin, but I would also have to start off with a l'chaim. We're after Tisha B'Av, and it's been a sad time. We couldn't drink wine. And, now's the time to wish for all the good things going forward, and we should only have simchas and good things in our community. So I want to say l'chaim.
Amen. Chaim.
There's a story about a fellow.
If I would have known, I would have had something next time.
There's a story. You got to come prepared, Rabbi. There's a story about a fellow who would come into a bar every night, and he would ask the bartender for a drink of Jack Daniels, but not one shot, 2 shots. He would come in and have his 2 shots. And so he would do for many, many years, every single night. The bartender one night looks over to the guy and says, listen, I got to ask you a question. Why do you take 2 shots every time of the same thing of Jack Daniels every single night when you come to the bar? So he says, when I was in the war, I had a friend that we used to love to drink together, Jack Daniels. And he was lost in the war, unfortunately. And it's really been really tough without him all these years. We had a very, very close relationship. And so in his memory, every night I come and I have 1 drink for me and 1 drink for him. Years pass, he does the same thing. One night he comes in and he says, can I have 1 shot of Jack Daniels? The bartender is so surprised. He says, you gave all these years, you're going to go against your tradition for so many years. You have to give me an explanation. What's going on? So he says, I drink every night for my friend and myself, but I quit drinking. So I'll only have 1 for him. So everyone's muted. I can't see what the response is, but I thought it was funny.
That's good.
Okay. So
you're telling us that you start off every day with a l'chaim. Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't start every day off with a l'chaim. This is a unique opportunity. Don't think I'm alcoholic.
Okay.
Anyways, so Rabbi Bergman first asked me to speak about the Chabad experience. I thought it's a simple task for me. I'm a Chabad guy, and I've been living this life all my time, and this should be something easy to share. But the truth is, when I start thinking about all the concepts and how much the concepts drive my practice and our practice, whoever's involved in Chabad or learns Chabad Chassidus, that it's really not so easy to share in a specific amount of time, especially half hour, an hour. It's there's a lot of terminology, there's a lot of concepts that take a lot of time to go through, but I'll try to keep it concise and the things that, are meaningful to me and came to my mind. And I'll try to, speak about it through my personal experience of how I experienced it. And so, as Rabbi Bergman said, there was the Balatanya, and since then there's been 7 Chabad rabbis, Chabad Rebbes, and it's been, Chabad Chassidus has evolved a lot over time, and the way I live my Chabad Chassidus life is very much a reflection of how it's evolved. So a lot of the things that I'm going to speak about are through the lenses, the way I personally practice and the way I learn Chabad Chassidus and what it means to me. And so to begin, I was born in New York, Brooklyn, Crown Heights, the little shtetl of Crown Heights. If anybody of you have been there, it's not that big. It's, maybe 10 blocks by 10 blocks. And I went to a Chabad school there, which the Chabad school is, at least the main one, is what they call Al Taharas HaKodesh, where there's no secular studies studied. It's just Limud HaKodesh. You learn Chumash, you learn Gemara, you only learn Torah, basically. And that was elementary. And then we move on to high school, Mesivta, where the real, learning and Jewish practice real begins in a completely new dimension. And the way the day is structured is we learn in the morning, as a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy, you come to yeshiva, what they call it Mesivta, and you have an hour to an hour and a half in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, of learning Chabad Chassidus. It could be Tanya, it could be Lekutei Torah, which is another work that was written by the Alter Rebbe, Baal Tanya. It could be Derech Mitzvah, which is a work which was written by Tzemach Tzedek. It could be the most recent Rebbes. It could be from any of the Rebbes. It could be Chassidus from them, but it's only Chabad Chassidus. And we learn it before davening. And the reason we learn it before davening is an old tradition of learning Chassidus before davening, because Chassidus is very different than when you learn in Gemara, you learn in Chumash. When you learn Chassidus, it's really the study of the divine. It's the study of Hashem. It's the study of God. It's the study of our soul. It's a study of meaning of mitzvahs. And so it really inspires you to think about Hashem. And it really inspires you to think about the meaning behind different mitzvahs and the meaning behind our reason of being here, our purpose. And so when you learn Chassidus before davening, your davening takes on a completely different dimension. When you say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, after you learned a piece of Chassidus on Shema Yisrael, it takes on a whole new dimension, right? The simple meaning is, Hear, O Israel, Lord our God is Hashem is one. And, Chassidic dimension would take on a more elaborate meaning, where Shema Yisrael is, hear, Yisrael, listen, really hear. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, the name Hashem, which represents the godly energy, which constantly recreates the world. Elokeinu, and the godly energy, which is concealing the infinite energy in order that the world should be able to come into existence, because if it would just come from the infinite energy of Hashem, how could infinite come finite? So you have to have some sort of energy that's able to conceal the infinite and make it into a finite energy. Hashem Elokeinu, that Hashem, which is Elokeinu, which conceals the divine energy, Hashem Echad, it's one Hashem. It's all one Hashem. Though Hashem has maybe multiple dimensions in how his relationship is with the world and how he creates the world, Hashem is one. And not that Hashem Yochid, that Hashem is the only one, but Hashem Echad, that Hashem is one with the existence. Hashem is one with his energy, and Hashem is one with the world. And so when you say these things and you really have an understanding and a background and on the Chassidus, your davening is a completely different davening. And so that's how we start our day. Then after davening, we move on to, we have our break, we have our breakfast, and then we go to learning what we call Nigla, which is the revealed part of Torah. Chassidus is the mystical part of Torah, the Soid, where you have Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid. It's Soid. It's not so apparent in the text of many of our learning. But then there's the part of learning which is Nigla, which is the revealed part of learning, which includes Gemara, Chumash, all the rest of Torah, pretty much. And that's what we learn for the bulk of our day, from about 11 o'clock till 7 p.m. Or 6 p.m. And then we go home for supper, and we come back for another hour of Chassidus. So we basically have about 2 to 3 hours a day of learning of Chassidus. You know, when you learn, the difference in the feeling between learning Chassidus and learning something which like Nigla, Gemara, you know, when you learn Gemara, you could learn Hamachlef Para B'Chamor, and you get involved in the Rashi and the Tosfos, and it's amazing. And it really, you know, you can get involved, and there's so much to learn. But sometimes you could get involved and you don't realize that this is really Hashem's Torah, and you have to be conscious of it, which is, you know, takes sometimes take a step back to think, oh, we're learning Hashem's Torah here. We're not just learning about a cow that went and gored another cow, or, you know, a bull that gored another bull. We're learning Hashem's Torah, and by Chassidus, it's something that's apparent in and of itself. You don't have to remember about the Nos and Torah. The Nos and Torah is apparent because that's who we're speaking about. We speak a lot about the soul, the spiritual energy, the divine structure of the world, the divine structure of a soul, the divine structure of Torah and mitzvahs. Those are things that you don't have to take a step back and say, hey, we remember the Nos and Torah. It's something that's apparent all the time. And that really drives a lot of our behavior and our motivation to do mitzvahs. So when you're in yeshiva, you know, Chabad, a lot of people look at it as an outreach movement. But the truth is that historically, for most of the generations of Chabad, it hasn't really been an outreach movement. It's been very much an inward movement. It's been a place where we call avodas al pi atzmai, working on yourself, davening for some time, learning Chassidus for some time, trying to create within yourself avas Hashem, yiras Hashem, which takes much effort. It's not just thinking about the concepts. It's about making the concepts real to you. And that takes a lot of effort. And so when we're in yeshiva, outreach is not really on the table. Those are the years when you're in yeshiva is to really work on yourself and build your skills, so that when you come to a point where you have to enter the real world, you have the skills that you have obtained in yeshiva. However, aside for the many days and hours that you spend in yeshiva, there's some opportunity to do some outreach, which is primarily Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoon, all the Rabbeim have to go home to prepare for Shabbos. So usually end at about 12, 1 o'clock. And the boys all have an opportunity, have some free time. They can go on what we call mivtzayim. Mivtzayim means campaign, which refers to the campaigns that the Rebbe, the most recent Rebbe, set up. Many of you are familiar with the campaign of tefillin, that Chabad is very into putting on tefillin on people. But really, the Rebbe had 10 different campaigns. You know, there are many different ones. We're not going to go into all of them. One of them was mezuzah. One of them is tzedakah. You know, one of them is Bayis Mali Sfarim, where the Rebbe wanted that many people should just own Sfarim, not necessarily irrelevant if you're learning the Sfarim or not, you should have Sfarim in your house. Why? Because ultimately, if you have Sfarim on the shelf, you're likely to go over to it and open it up, hopefully. If you have any intellectual curiosity, or, you have, an urge or a thirst for learning. So there were many different campaigns. And so on Friday afternoon was a time that the boys would go out. I would go out every Friday afternoon with my friends, and we would go and try to bring mitzvahs to people that would not have them on their own. What we would do is basically map out New York City, and you would have two different people, two boys per group, and they would go to what their particular route that they were assigned or that they chose. And you would basically, if it was residential, you would go door to door residential. If it was commercial, you'd go door to door commercial. My route was commercial. So I used to go door to door to different businesses, ask if there were people that were Jewish there. And there were many, because I was assigned to a more Jewish area. Mine was Kings Highway and one of the avenues. I don't even remember, Avenue J maybe. And there were many different Jews there. And what we used to do is I used to ask them if they're Jewish. And if they weren't, I would share with them the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach. And if they were Jewish, I would share with them, ask them if they would like to put on tefillin, ask them if they would like to do a mitzvah, any kind of mitzvah, whatever speaks to them, Ask them how they're doing. Just strike up a conversation with them. And, sometimes you would get pushback from some people, but for most of the part, and probably 95% of them are happy to do a mitzvah. And the other 5% of them, 90% of those, after multiple attempts, become happy to do a mitzvah. So I've put on tefillin with many, many people this way. And, we share a Dvar Torah, we've created relationships, speak sometimes during the week. And it was a very, very nice, that was like our, leisure time going on Mitzvahim. When you get a little bit older, maybe it gets a little bit more difficult to approach people in such a way. But when you're younger in yeshiva, at least when we were, and these concepts are so real to you, and I'll go through a few of the concepts, asking someone to put on tefillin is like a no big deal. It's not, if he doesn't want to put on tefillin, he doesn't realize why he doesn't want to put on tefillin. That's the way you think at that age. And the truth is that there's Hasidic philosophy behind it. Because
if I pause it for a second, first of all,
Sure.
I think that's really, really all fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that. I wanted to ask, I would say, I think you're going to get to this maybe, but I want to ask two questions. First, relevant to the last thing you shared about going out on these mitzvahs, these missions. You sort of spoke to this, but would you ever, like as a child, nervous, or did you ever get discouraged if you go up to, like, you're walking really far and you're going up to these strangers, or one of them says, like, get out of here? Or that's one question I wanted to ask you. The second one is, and maybe we're about to get to this, as a child, what drove you to do this? Is this just something that was the thing that you do? It's sort of cultural, or was there some sort of overall mission or philosophical goal that you were trying to accomplish in doing these things? Like, it seems to me not that many people outside Chabad do this, right? Like, I haven't seen too many others go up to random strangers and ask them if they want to put on tefillin, which is a beautiful thing. I like the way you said it. By the way, if you want to help me out tomorrow morning, I'm just joking. I'm okay. But that being said, it's obviously an emphasis of Chabad Hasidim. And I'm wondering where that comes from. What were you told as a child that inspired you to do that?
Okay, so a lot of it, or all of it, comes from learning Chassidus. And primarily, I was about to get into this. Well, first, your question was I ever discouraged? And I can't believe I'm saying it, but it's true. We were never discouraged as kids. Even if someone told us no, we weren't discouraged. And the reason behind it is like this. We're taught in Tanya, and I'm not sure if you guys got to it or at all or not, is that every person, every Jew, is really a link between the Creator and the creation, between God and the world, between the infinite and the finite, whatever words you want to put it into. And the reason why every Jew is that way is because a Jew is unique out of all the creations, that it's comprised of two opposites. It's comprised of a godly element, and it's comprised of a materialistic element. And so if someone tells you that they don't want to put on tefillin today, the way we attribute it is that they're not in touch with their godly element. And really, their godly soul would love to do something like this. And, there's a Hasidic interpretation of the words, mitoich sheloi lishma ba lishma, that through, which a simple meaning is that through loy lishma, through making, giving a kid candy or whatever, or for an alternative reason, he's performing a mitzvah, that through that he'll come to bolishma, he'll come to do the mitzvah on his own motivation. And the Hasidic interpretation is that mitoich sheloi lishma, really in the depths of the loy lishma, the depths of the reason why he doesn't want to do it is lishma. He really does have the desire to do it. Every person has a spiritual need has a spiritual, not just a spiritual desire. Every person has a spiritual need, and if they don't have it, they're lacking something and they're suffering from it. And so when we go on Mivtzayim and we ask someone to put on tefillin and he doesn't want to, or he's angry and he gives us an angry response, and whatever it may be, we're okay with it. And we understand that it's, he's struggling, but there's a godly element that he has to himself that would love to do it. And so if we can go and approach him again and somehow tap into that godly light, that godly soul that he has within him, it will transform him. And I'll give you a story just that happened with my father just now. My father, my sister is a sonographer in New York City, and she works in a clinic. And the head doctor over there, who runs the whole clinic, is a Jew. And he's a very nice man. My father one day came to visit my sister in her clinic, at her clinic. And my father, before coming, asked my sister if he would be okay if he introduces himself to the head doctor and asks him if he would like to put on tefillin. So my sister, right away on the siblings chat, that my parents aren't on, started posting. She was concerned. She was a little, uncomfortable. Obviously, she's starting her career in sonography, and she has a great relationship going on. And who knows how it's going to go? My father's going to ask this guy who's not religious at all. He put on tefillin, and how is that going to go down? Anyways, my father comes. She said okay, but my father comes. My father introduced himself to the head doctor, and he asked him if he'd be okay to put on tefillin, and he was happy to. And when he put on the tefillin, he got so emotional, and it reminded him of his bar mitzvah. And as the way my father describes it, is when you looked at him, it looked like you just lit a flame. And there was, he's not a religious person, but he has a soul. And so when you put on tefillin, you do a mitzvah, it can ignite that light that he has within him. And so he really, he was really moved by that. And the following time, my sister's husband went and he asked him to put on tefillin. He says, oh, you're here, you have tefillin? Let me put on tefillin. So it's unbelievable the impact that you could have on people when it seems that that's not the way of life that they're living, and it's not what they want. But again, what do they want? Maybe they want more than one thing. Maybe they have a materialistic temptations, and maybe they have a godly temptation that's maybe not being met. And if you can offer it to them, it may be, they may take you up on it.
Thank you. That's special. That was beautiful. Amazing.
Okay, I hope I answered your questions. I'm not.
I want to go a little further. We'll take a few more questions. Although
sure.
You already said so much, but there's a few things you wanted to cover. So I'm wondering if, I know a lot, like we've all been to far out places. Maybe some of us have been to some more far out places. You could go anywhere. You could find Chabad. Go to Scandinavia. You could go to the most far out places in the world, and there's a Chabad Rebbe there. And some of these places have such almost no Jewish infrastructure. They're living in the middle of nowhere. And I know this is based on this concept called shluchis. I don't know if I said that right.
Shluchis, yeah.
Shluchis. I'm wondering, I know that I don't think you're a shliach. I don't know if you see yourself in that way. You're a wonderful chazan, but I'm wondering if you could talk about that. What inspires someone to go on shluchis? What's the motivation? What's the goal? What is that life like? Where does the support come from?
Sure. So I'd like to share with you, first of all, a lot of my family happen to be shluchim. My father-in-law is a shliach. I don't know if any of you go so far north of Toronto, but my father-in-law has a Chabad center at Bathurst and Elgin Mills. And my uncle is Chabad of Midtown. So I do have a lot of family that are shluchim. So the philosophy that really drives a lot of shluchim, I'll start off with an anecdote, a little of a joke, which actually has a lot of implication. They say a person after 120, there were two Chassidim after 120, one from Breslov and one from Lubavitch, that came to Beis Din Shel Maalah, came to the heavenly court, and they were asked all the questions, and it was decided that although they called themselves Chassidim, they didn't necessarily conduct themselves in the proper manner, And so they were sent to Gehenna. They were sent to hell. The Breslover Chassid, enters the chambers of Gehenna, and he's davening, he's praying to his Rebbe, to Reb Nachman Breslov, please take me out of here, please. And Reb Nachman Breslov comes and schleps him by his payas, throws him out of Gehenna, and brings him to Gan Eden, brings him to the good place. The Chabad Chassid also does the same thing. He sees what happened to the Breslover Chassid, and he starts davening at the entrance of Gehenna, and he says, Rebbe, please save me. The Rebbe comes and gives him $1 and says, Bracha v'hatzlacha on your shlichus. You should have much success on your shlichus. And so obviously this is a joke, but there's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth to it, in which a shliach, wherever he will go, will think about what his mission is. He won't think about himself. And so when you learn Chassidus a lot, and you really internalize a lot of the concepts, you realize that this world is really a godly world. It's a world where we have to make it a dwelling place for Hashem. And if you're focused on the purpose, you realize that it's not about yourself. It's about a greater mission. It's about a mission of making this world a better place. And so when you have that ingrained in you, and some people have it on the level of Chachma, I'll explain, as you guys learned, you have Chachma, where you're learning a challenging concept, and it just dawned on you, oh, maybe this is the right answer, and you have a resolution, a brainstorm, but it's not necessarily in a form that you own it, in a form that you can explain it to someone. Then you have a level of Bina where you can elaborate on it and you can explain it to somebody, you have it in an organized fashion in your mind. And then there's Das. Das is where you really connect with the idea. And it's almost a connection where it is right away a segue to your feelings once you connect with that idea. And so there are, many Chabadniks that have this on a level of Chachma, this concept and this drive to really bring more godliness into the world. Some people have it on a level of Bina, some people have it on a level of Das, but it's very taught in the talks of the Rebbe. The Rebbe spoke a bit about it a ton, about bringing godliness throughout the world, spreading Judaism and spreading the Chassidus, and spreading goodness and kindness, even Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, to people that aren't Jewish. And there's a teaching of the Rambam that the Rebbe often would quote. And the teaching goes like this. I have it here somewhere. I took a screenshot of it. Oh, it says in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam writes, Lefichach tzarich kol adam sheyira atzmei kol hashana kula. A person has to look at himself the whole year round. Ki'ilu chetzioi zakai, as if he's half meritorious, v'chetzioi chayev, and evenly balanced with guilt. And so the whole world is like that. It's half on a scale, equally balanced, good and evil. If someone sins one sin, he can tip the scale and bring the whole world to that the whole world is majority of sinning. If he does one good deed, he could tip the scale into a good way. And so this is really the mindset of Chabad, where we go out and every single mitzvah counts. It doesn't make a difference how big it is. It doesn't make a difference how small it is. Every mitzvah counts. And so when we know that there's an area where there's not that many Jews, but that we can bring mitzvahs to them, and you don't even know, one person is a whole world. Every person has a whole world in it for themselves. And so even if there are not that many Jews, but you can bring Judaism to that area, you are creating this world to be a better place. And one of the probably the core teachings of Chassidus is based on a medrash, where it says, that why did God create the world? God created, what did he need the world for? God created the world because he wanted a dwelling place for himself. He wanted that the Jews should bring godliness into this world and make the world a better place. And so that is our drive to make this world a better place. And ultimately, it will happen when Mashiach comes. We'll know that this world is a better place. But, until then, we have to do everything we can to try to do each one mitzvah at a time to try to bring this world to a better place.
Beautiful, beautiful. That was very, very eloquently said. Thank you. I know we're already at 8:36. So there were two more questions that I wanted to ask you, and two more things I'd like if we could discuss together. And then we have time, depending on your time permitting, maybe we'll turn to some of these questions. They're not too heavy, so don't worry. One of them was, you mentioned the Rebbe. I know that, look, there's Lubavitch Rebbe's influence. The last one, with Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, his influence is so well known, and I know that he has a special influence even today on Lubavitcher Hasidim. There isn't another Lubavitch Rebbe at this point. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about the Rebbe for a few minutes and the role and influence he continues to have on your life and the life of Chabad Hasidim and some of the things he stood for. And then if you have, is there anything that you want people to know about Chabad Hasidus that they may not know? Anything that you think people would benefit from understanding a little bit better?
Okay, so I'll start with the latter, and then I'll go to the former question.
Okay, great.
So I'm not sure how familiar people are. I know a lot of people are familiar with the work that Chabad does, but I don't know how many people are familiar with the Chassidus, the philosophy behind it. And a lot of people associate Chassidim to be, to have their Torah to be Chassidish Vertlach, a nice word on this, a nice twist on that. But they don't see it as being academically challenging, piece of work, academically challenging study. There's, if you take, I don't know about that much about other Chassidus, but if you take just the Chabad Chassidus, there's hundreds and hundreds of Sfarim on it. And there are so many insightful teachings within it. And many of them are very intellectually challenging and hard to grasp, because when you speak about this physical world, it's very easy to understand. But when you're speaking about spiritual concepts, sometimes it's very hard to grasp. And Chassidus is kind of the spiritual science, the divine science of the structure of the world and the divine science of the soul. And so it's not only the behavior of Chassidim, there's also a lot of philosophy behind it. And so I think that's something that's, I'm not sure if many people know the extent of how much, Torah there is out there on Chassidus. In regards to your first question, so I really can't do any justice to the legacy of the Rebbe. There are so many stories out there. The Rebbe transformed every community in some way and reached almost the entire world. I mean, where is there not a Chabad Shliach? They say wherever there's Coke, there's a Chabad Shliach to teach you how to make the bracha on Coke. But Iran doesn't have a Chabad Shliach, but there's places that don't have. But the reach of the Chabad movement is tremendous, and the Rebbe obviously was the one behind it. I'll just share something that I've watched recently of Rabbi Sachs gave a talk one year at the International Conference of Shluchim. So every year,
Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs.
Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, yes. He gave a speech the keynote speech at the Chabad Shluchim conference maybe about 10 years ago, but it's on YouTube and I've been watching it recently. And it's unbelievable to hear him as a leader, a real leader, Rabbi Sachs, to hear him describe his interactions with the Rebbe. And I'll just share a little bit of his account that he's presented. So he says that when he was a sophomore in college in Cambridge, he was traveling to the United States to interview many different rabbis. And every single rabbi told him, you must go see the Chabad Rebbe. And he obviously never met the Chabad Rebbe before. He was a young fellow. And so he did. He made it his effort. He went to 770 Eastern Parkway, which is in Crown Heights, not far from where I grew up. And he approached the first chassid that he saw, and he said, can I please meet the Rebbe? And the chassid kind of chuckled. He didn't, he kind of laughed at him, and he said, there's thousands of people waiting to see the Rebbe. There's no way you're going to get in just, right now. So he told the chassid, he says, listen, I'm traveling the States for a few weeks. If there's an opportunity, give me a call. A few weeks later, he gets a call that there's an availability for him to see the Rebbe. This was a Motzei Shabbos, and he says at the time he did not have much money. He had enough money for a Greyhound bus, and he was in LA at the time, Los Angeles. He took a Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to New York, 72-hour trip, to see the Rebbe. He got to the Rebbe, and aside for his trip, there was a long wait to get into his private audience. And he came into the Rebbe to interview the Rebbe like he's interviewed many other rabbis. And he asked the Rebbe many philosophical questions, intellectual questions, and the Rebbe responded to all his questions. But after he was done, the Rebbe did something that no one else had done to him before, none of these other rabbis. And the Rebbe asked him, how is Jewish life in Cambridge? How many Jewish students are there in Cambridge? What are you doing to bring these Jewish students closer to Jewish life? And Rabbi Sachs says he was not ready for that. And, he was already thinking of what kind of excuse he can bring up. And then, he says the British are very talented at, speaking in complex language to bring up the same point and, say their excuse. And so he started saying, in the situation where I find myself, and the Rebbe did something unusual, which he wouldn't do to others, and he interrupted Rabbi Sachs, and he says, people don't find themselves in situations, they put themselves in situations. And if you put yourself in one situation, you can put yourself in another situation. And so he got the message. And at that point, he realized something. And he realized that a good leader creates many followers, but a great leader creates many leaders. And this is what the Rebbe's message was to him. And this is the message that he took, that the Rebbe wants him to be a leader. And every Jew is a leader. And so, Rabbi Bergman, you referenced earlier, there's shluchim and then there's non-shluchim. But the truth is that maybe there aren't shluchim in profession, but everyone has a mission in this world. And if we are all leaders and we all take leadership for our surroundings and to create an environment, then we are all leaders. And that's what the Rebbe has done. He's created many, many leaders. So Rabbi Sachs was due to go back to England, and but he was there for one more Shabbos, and he stayed for Shabbos, and he went over to the Farbrengen of the Rebbe, which Farbrengen was a long session with the Rebbe, where the Rebbe would share lots of Chassidus, and there would be a lot of nigunim and songs. And between breaks, sometimes people would approach the Rebbe. So the Chassidim encouraged Rabbi Sachs to go over to the Rebbe and say L'chaim, tell him he's going back to England and he wants a bracha. And so he did. He went over to the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe that he's due to go back to England. And so he wants a bracha. So the Rebbe says, why are you going back now? So he said, the terms in Cambridge are starting again, and I need to be back on time. And so that's why I'm leaving. So the Rebbe turned to him, and the Rebbe said, but the terms don't start in Cambridge until October. And he had no idea how the Rebbe knew this, how the Rebbe knew when the terms in Cambridge start. The Rebbe said, you should stay for Rosh Hashanah. And then after Rosh Hashanah, you could go back. So Rabbi Sachs came down from the platform where the Rebbe was sitting, and he was speaking to the Chassidim, and he decided to stay for Rosh Hashanah. And he had a very uplifting experience there. I haven't been there when the Rebbe was there because I was born after 1993. But I have been in 770 for Rosh Hashanah, and just the mere fact the thousands of people that are there, squished, literally squished, and the singing, it's such an uplifting and inspiring experience that I very much relate to that he was sharing. And every Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it really brings me back to that time, because it's an extremely uplifting experience where you have thousands of Yidden, Jews together singing, Avinu Malkeinu, or whatever it may be. Anyway, so he stayed for Rosh Hashanah and he went back to England, and he says that his audience with the Rebbe, his private audience, didn't really change his life immediately. But it was always in the back of his head, this challenge to try to bring Jews closer to Judaism. And so after he finished his university, he was writing philosophy and he was teaching, he decided to go for smicha. And when he finished smicha, he said, you know what, that's it. I worked on myself in growth, in Jewish growth. Now it's time to go pursue the world, pursue my career. And so that's what he was going to do. But he says, you know what? He made the second mistake of his life. He went back to the Rebbe. He went back to the Rebbe. He got a private audience. And the Chassidim told him before that when you go in, you should write your 3 options of your career that you would like to do. And the Rebbe will choose from one of them. Tell you this one you shouldn't, this one you should. And so that's what he did. And he went into the private audience of the Rebbe. The 3 careers that he put in were to be a professor or a fellow in his university. Another was to go to a school of economics and to be an economist. And the third was to be a lawyer, to be a barist. And the Rebbe nixed all of those options. And the Rebbe told him that he should, there's a shortage of rabbis in the world, and he should train rabbis, and he himself should be a rabbi in a congregation. And Rabbi Sachs didn't know what to do. I mean, he just nixed all of his life careers and just tells him what, Anyways, this is what Rabbi Sachs ended up doing. He ended up training rabbis. He ended up being in a congregation. And at this conference, the keynote, when he was speaking, he shared the following. He says, you know what? This is the path I took in my life. And I put Yiddishkeit first, and I lost nothing. All of the careers that I wanted to pursue, I've accomplished in some way. He was a professor in Oxford University, and he obtained 2 professorships in London University. He delivered the top 2 lectures in economics in Britain, and he was invited at the time to speak to 600 lawyers to give them their keynote address. And so Rabbi Sachs says what he's learned from this is that sometimes instead of chasing your ambitions, maybe it's best to stop chasing them and let them chase you. And if you go with the path of Yiddishkeit, things will always turn out for the better. And so this is just one story that I've just recently, been listening to, and it really shows how the Rebbe created leaders. I mean, look at Rabbi Sachs. The breadth of his impact on world Jewry was unbelievable. And a lot of it has come from his influence from the Rebbe. I mean, this is what he says. It's not what I'm saying. And it's just unbelievable to think about it. It's unbelievable that there's 5,000 rabbis that come in front of Eastern Parkway to take a picture a year, and they're from all over the world. I mean, my brother was on, they call it Merkez Shlichus, where in Pesach, you would go to different communities in the world to create a Seder. He went to Cambodia. What's in Cambodia? I have no idea. But apparently there's Israeli backpackers, and he made a Seder for them. And they were able to have kosher matzah, and they were able to have more, and they were able to have 4 cups of wine. So this concept that the Rebbe had such an influence is truly unbelievable. And that's what I take away from it. And that inspires me on my daily life. When I go to a business meeting, I just want to finish with this. When I went to a trade show recently, and there were a few other people there, and I asked them if they were Jewish, and they told me that they are. And I put on tefillin with them in the trade show in front of everyone. There was, the thousands of people there walking by, and I was doing my own business over there, and this was an opportunity that I had to put on tefillin with someone. So I stopped and I put on tefillin with them. That was on day 1 of the trade show. On day 2 of the trade show, they came to me and asked me if they could put on tefillin. So these are things that really drive me and inspire me to try to live a Jewish life, but a meaningful Jewish life, and try to make the world a better place, the best that we can.
Beautiful. That was very special again. Okay, I want to go to some of the audience questions that were texted to me. You know, Chaim, you really impressed our audience here. And one question that we got is they're curious to know how, if you didn't receive a formal secular education and most of your studies were in Hebrew or Yiddish, how you can so effectively communicate in English.
Right. So the truth is that our teachers, not all the years, but most of the years did speak in English to us. When they would translate the Chumash, they would translate it in Yiddish. But for like explaining concepts and, general interaction was in English. But we did have many years that I also had rabbis that only spoke to us in Yiddish. From my personal experience, my personal journey, not every Chabadnik is this way, but my mother put me into after school. I would go for an hour to learn English, basic English writing, English, grammar, just math, things that were useful that you really need in the real world. And I would learn that. And so that's where it came up, that's where I started learning. But we would only learn from 9 years old and older. Till 9, we didn't learn any English or any secular studies. But after that, we did. And that's where I got my English studies from, and from there and the Art Scroll Gemara.
Beautiful, beautiful. We're all very happy that you're not, I guess, the Cambodia form of Shliach. But one question that we got was how you ended up in Toronto.
So the easiest answer is that I married someone from Toronto.
Like everybody else ends up in Toronto.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Canada.
Very good, very good. And last question that I received was, I think this is a good question. If you would talk, please, for a few moments, if you don't mind, about the role of women in Chabad and how the claim is, maybe as opposed to other, you could say, sects or Hasidic forms of Hasidus, women seem maybe a bit more active. And so could you speak to that for a second? What's sort of the education and upbringing and philosophy that women are taught?
Okay, so that is true, especially for Hasidic sects. Women play a much larger role in Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe had many gatherings where it was only women, and the Rebbe would only address the women. I mean, there's cultural aspects, there's Jewish aspects where they play a role. I think generally the women are very comfortable in their roles. They have if they want to work, they can work. If they want to drive a car, they could drive a car. I think in general, the philosophy of Hasidim was to really utilize any tools that you have. And so the Rebbe's talks often would be broadcasted on television. Yet he would tell his own Hasidim not to have television. But the women, he would encourage them to use their skills to bring godliness into this world. So whatever skills it may be. So if you have a couple, a man and a husband and a wife that move on shlichus to somewhere, it's very much encouraged to be like Avraham and Sarah, where Avraham would be makar of the men and Sarah would be makar of the woman. And so they really work hand in hand together as a team to try to work with each other. Still, primarily, the woman generally, is the one that's in the household, and there's tremendous importance presented that, the women are the akeres habayis. They are the main role in the home, and they provide the closeness to the children and the nurture to the children. And so generally, the mothers are very often at home with their children, but when they have the ability, they're out there and they're trying to also make the world a better place. So, they also go on sometimes mitzvahim, and they would go to women and approach women and ask them if they have Shabbos candles. That's what my wife would do when she was in school. She would go on Friday afternoons and approach. She wouldn't go to men and ask them to put on tefillin, but she would go, to the women, ask them if they want to light Shabbos candles. And one of the other mitzvahim that the Rebbe wanted, the campaigns that the Rebbe wanted other women should be familiar with, even secular women, was Taras HaMishpacha, the mitzvah of Nida, the mitzvah of Mikvah. So they do certainly play a role in active Yiddishkeit.
Beautiful. Thank you. Very well said. Once again, really, it's been so special talking with you. Really, I'm very inspired. I'm so inspired by your vision of making a dira b'tachtonin, making a dwelling place in this world, and how comprehensive that is, and everything that you do, and everything that. And I hope we can all look for a little more godliness in the world in all of our interactions, and take your message that we're all leaders, and to see the potential in every person and every Jew to light that spark. So we have maybe 4 minutes until 9. Maybe you could end off this session with one more Chabad niggin.
Okay, so that's my favorite part. I was hoping we weren't going to miss that. So thank God we have some time. So I had 2 prepared, but I'll sing one of them. The one that I have in mind is called the Beinani, and it's very, very meaningful to me because the Beinani is a song that is attributed to the previous Rebbe, not the most recent Rebbe, but what is referred to as the previous Rebbe, who was the most recent Rebbe's father-in-law. And my grandfather, at his bris, his sandik was the previous Rebbe, and he remembers them singing this niggin by the previous Rebbe. And the name of the niggin is called the Beinani. And I don't know if all of you are aware, but the Tanya has another name, and it's called Sefer Shel Beinonim. It's called the Book of the Intermediary. And the intermediate character, which is the main character of Tanya, is a person who is constantly struggled with worldly temptations, but is always overcoming them. And so this song is a song that represents this character. So if you could hear maybe in certain phrases of the song, maybe the concept of a struggle, or the concept of overcoming the struggle, like over concept of being composed and not being influenced by the worldly matters and giving into your temptations, you can see it in the niggin. And so I'll sing in the niggin. It's a niggin it's with only 2 words, I and oi. So I hope you could follow. But so it's a niggin with basically no words, and so I don't know if over Zoom what the quality is, but I'll try to sing it so you can get a concept. It goes like this. That's the first phrase. Each phrase goes twice, but I'll sing it once to spare you some time. That's the niggin.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Chazzan Freund. Really a very special night for all of us, and we should all be blessed to do what we can to make a little more space for God in this world.
Amen.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be well.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we do this again?